West Street begins where the market square forgets its confidence. The open space of chatter and light narrows into a corridor of stone and shadow where the lamps burn low and the windows blink like tired eyes. The air carries the faint scent of wet dust and chimney smoke, and the cobbles gleam with the residue of rain. It is not a street that invites company, yet it listens intently to anyone who dares to pass. Mrs. Margaret Fielding had spent most of her life teaching the children of Chipping Norton to be measured, polite, and precise. She had retired some years before, but old habits die last. She still corrected the grammar of the greengrocer's sign and still walked as though each stride must count toward the lesson of a day. That night, she was returning home from a neighbor's cottage, the evening pressing in around her like an old shawl. A borrowed book rested neatly under her arm. West Street was the shorter route, and Margaret Fielding had never avoided a rumor merely because it frightened others. The lane greeted her with silence. A pale mist hovered close to the ground, gathering the light from the few remaining lamps and turning it into trembling gold. Doors leaned against their frames. A shutter clapped softly somewhere up ahead, then thought better of it. She liked the rhythm of her steps, regular, confident, the shoes of a woman who did not believe in nonsense. Halfway down, she stopped. It was not her decision. The stillness had decided for her. The air drew tight around her, thinning, focusing, as though the street itself had taken aim. Behind her right ear, she felt it, a small, exact weight of attention. Not breath, not touch, but an alignment so deliberate that it felt like a mark upon the soul. Her throat tightened. A pulse fluttered in her temple. For a moment, she could not tell whether she was breathing. She did not move. A teacher knows that silence can be stronger than panic. "Now then," she said softly, her voice steady and reasonable, as though speaking to a restless classroom. "That will do." For 3 heartbeats, the air held her still, its attention like a lens. Then, without protest, it let her go. A cool draft brushed the back of her neck, a ghost's apology. Margaret adjusted her scarf, drew in a controlled breath, and continued home with her usual posture, back straight, chin forward, as if she had dismissed the very idea of fear. At home, she boiled water for tea, wound her clock, and opened her borrowed book. She did not read. When she finally slept, her dreams were filled with narrow lanes and measured footsteps behind her own. 2 evenings later, she told the landlord of the King's Head what had happened. "Something aimed at me," she said plainly, "behind the ear." He nodded, polishing a glass he had already cleaned twice. "Aye," he said, "that'll be the shooter." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Shooter?" "The shooter of West Street," he said. "Been there for years, doesn't harm anyone, just lines you up, so they say. Folks feel it click, you can tell when it's you. And what does one do when that happens? You give it 3 breaths," he said. "Don't fight, don't turn, move your shoulder, not your head. It'll let you go." "They say it only holds the rude." Margaret took a sip of her drink. "Then it will learn my manners," she said, "and perhaps I'll learn its." A week passed before she walked that way again. The lamps burned lower than before, each circle of light small enough to make her doubt the next. The rain had left the cobbles slick. She reached the midpoint and felt it again. The faint pressure, exact and cold, pressing into the space just behind her right ear. Then came the sound. Click, metallic, tiny, inevitable. "You may have your 3 seconds, she said calmly, "but I'll not wait longer." She counted. 1, 2, 3. The air released her. She smiled, as one does when a lesson has been understood, and walked on. At the corner she found Mr. Jenks, the gallery owner, standing rigid with his face toward the wall, as though waiting for the stone to speak. "Caught?" she asked. "Every night this week," he said, his voice a whisper. "You're doing it wrong," said Margaret. 3 breaths, shoulder, not eyes. He obeyed, and the unseen presence melted away. He exhaled shakily. "You've tamed it," he said. "I've reasoned with it," said Margaret, and left him to think about the difference. In time, West Street became part of her routine. She took the lane often, testing its temperament. Some nights the air was quiet, as if asleep. Other nights the pressure returned, firm but fair. She treated it with patience and dignity. 3 breaths, a small turn of the shoulder, a nod to the dark. It always seemed enough. The townspeople too adjusted. The constable admitted that he had negotiated with it once, after feeling a strange chill and hearing that sharp, metallic click. Boys dared each other to stand in the middle of the lane after dark. Few lasted more than 2 breaths. Nobody laughed about it anymore. One night, after a late visit to a sick neighbor, Margaret walked home through a mist so dense it felt like walking inside a memory. The presence came earlier than usual, tracing a cold line across the back of her neck. "Not tonight," she said firmly. "You've had your chance." The pressure eased instantly, as though acknowledging her authority. She began to think of it less as a haunting and more as a lesson. The street was teaching restraint, perhaps even courtesy. It intervened when tempers flared or when thoughtlessness hurried people into danger. A cyclist once stopped there for no reason at all, seconds before a van came skidding round the corner. A drunk collapsed against the wall and woke the next day without bruise or injury. The lane, Margaret thought, was correcting rather than punishing. One winter night, she came across 2 young men arguing beneath the lamps, their voices brash with ale. The argument stopped halfway through a curse. Both froze, staring ahead. Margaret passed between them like a headmistress inspecting her pupils. "Good evening," she said mildly. The pressure broke, the men scattered. Margaret smiled faintly. "Well done," she murmured to the lane. "You learn quickly." The next day she told the landlord, "It isn't cruel, it's disciplinary." He chuckled. "You've taught it manners." "No," said Margaret. "It's always had them. I've merely reminded it. If you walk West Street after midnight, you may feel it too. The moment the air contracts and the world goes still. Don't turn, don't run. Breathe 3 times. Offer your shoulder, not your face. Then walk on quietly with respect. And if you happen to see a woman ahead of you with silver hair carrying a book and walking as though she owns the pavement, keep her pace. The lane approves of her, and through her, it might just let you pass." Please subscribe to this channel to be alerted to the next episode of Ghosts of the Cotswolds.